You are about to move into a discussion of reception, and I've heard you speak quite articulately about this process and how it might actually help the Anglican communion.
I think it's really important. This is probably an unintended consequence of Church of the Triune God, but I do think it's a gift to the communion, this section on heresicism and reception. Heresy being a theological piece, schism being an ecclesiological division. And reception, I think, provides us a way through very difficult and controversial kinds of theological points, practical points, by giving us a framework that is not a willy-nilly, undisciplined framework, but rather reception is the process by which the church discerns the truth of a proposition or a claim.
What does that mean? What is reception? What do you mean?
Well, reception, in the Orthodox tradition, for example, when an ecumenical synod makes a decision, for example, the Nicene Creed, after Chalcedon, before the creed became the official creed, it had to be received. That is, the whole church had to recognize it as the sufficient summary statement of the faith. Until that time, the creed was used, the creed was taught, the creed was examined, and it was an open question. So what reception does is open a phase after a decision is taken, for example, be it the ordination of women or the role and function of gay and lesbian folk in orders, that a decision can be taken, a practice can be begun, but it remains an open question until such time as the whole church comes to what's called technically the sensus fidelium, the sense of the faithful. What that does positively is relieve us of the necessity of having to reach a conclusion in a specific time frame. What it allows us to do positively is to continue to explore, examine, question, have conversation, the point of which is not to convince the other of a particular position, but it is, in fact, to be open to the Spirit on the proposition that the Spirit will, in good time, bring us to the conclusion that is the right and faithful conclusion.
So it's possible that the church in one part of the globe, so to speak, global community, could be exercising a particular way of living out the Christian vocation in one way, and it could be lived out in a different way in another part of the global.
Absolutely. Reception is not a movement toward uniformity.
Okay.
Reception is a discernment process that functions in terms of kairos rather than chronos, the divine time rather than chronological time. And it is possible within that framework that the conclusion might be that it is right and faithful and theologically appropriate that one part of the church in its context is faithful in one kind of way and another part of the church is faithful in another kind of way, and that they can coincide. That's a possibility. It's also, and the Orthodox would point this out to us, reception does not predetermine an answer. So that is, a decision might be taken about an issue. It is not predetermined whether the ultimate discernment is reception or not reception.
It allows the process to unfold.
It does.
And gives the Spirit time to work with it.
That's right. And the problem, the challenge is that it's not tidy. It moves along at its own pace. Remember, it took 250 years to get from Nicaea to Chalcedon.
Right.
It's not a process that people can do quickly. It is a process of faithful discernment. And in the meantime, and this is important too, in the meantime, everybody remains together.
Right.
we're still in communion with one another. We are sacramentally bound by baptism to one another. Mm-hmm. To move apart from that is schismatic. Mm-hmm. And that is the most egregious sin of the church, in the church, because it divides the body.
It's almost like Archbishop Tutu was right. We meet.
That's right.
We keep coming together.
That's right. We may not understand each other at all, but we come together, and it's the common, deeper bond of faith that brings us to the table to break the bread, continue in the apostles' teaching and the prayers.
Now, you just came back from a meeting.
Yes.
And it wasn't here in Greensboro.
No, it was.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It was in Crete. The tradition is that every other meeting is hosted by the Anglicans and the Orthodox. Okay. And this time was the Orthodox turn. And so we met on the island of Crete in the city, right outside the city of Chania, which is on the northwest end of the island. It was wonderful. The weather is a lot like here. It was warm and humid. This was a first meeting of the new phase, and so it was muchly an exploratory meeting, where we were trying to determine who was there and what we were like, that sort of dance that one does in order to get to know each other. We also began to line out where we would go in our theological discussions. And the underlying questions are questions about ordination and church order. They're questions about human sexuality and decisions within various provinces of the Anglican Communion to ordain LBGT folk to holy orders. And what we decided, again, methodologically, is that if we ask those questions just baldly outright, we're not going to get very far. That's not going to be a productive approach. And so what we have chosen to do is go back to the very basics. What does it mean to be a human being? What does it mean to be in the image and likeness of God? To go back to the patristic sources and then trace out how that's developed in both of our traditions. How do we understand human being? The second set of papers for next time will be on what are the implications of human freedom for human being. And that will take us in the direction of what does it mean to be free? Is it, for example, simply the capacity to make multiple choices? Or is it, as St. Augustine said, to be truly free is to be most fully who we are, to be most natural? Is it a moral issue? Is it a theological issue? Is it a social issue? So we're going to explore all those kinds of things. And, obviously the trajectory is then going to move to what are the limitations of freedom, where are the boundaries, and what are the implications for our ecclesial life together. So I think that where we're trying to go is to develop a clear body of understanding, common understanding about the nature of human being, in order then to begin to deal more directly with the questions which for the Orthodox are very different kinds of questions than they are for Episcopalians in North America in 2009. So I think, it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds.
That's going to be interesting.
Yes, it will be.
Well, now, one last thing.
Yeah.
Church of the Triune God is available
It
where?
is available on the Anglican Communion website. It can be downloaded, and supplementary documents are also available. I think some of the papers that were presented in course are there. And there's, for example, the Reverend Dr. William Green, emeritus professor at the seminary in Austin, did a lot of work on the heresy and schism and reception section. But it's available there. It's in the process of being reprinted and should be available at some point soon.
Thank you.